So for anyone on the YouTube stream, the show will commence in about 7 minutes from this point on. I never quite know if I'm just talking out into the void because YouTube seems to be a bit, I don't know, seems to be a little indecisive as to when it starts broadcasting the signal. So when I did the show last time, none of this, that is to say the part where I just spoke a bit about the show beginning in about 5 minutes, made the cut. So I don't know exactly what YouTube opts to do. I tend to believe that it's probably a matter of priority as well, that because my channel is a nothing channel, it has quite low priority in the queue. So if the channel were bigger, I imagine if I started streaming, things might react immediately, whereas in my case, it takes a couple of minutes for things to wind up and get going. But either way, show will begin in about 5 minutes. Yes, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is that time again. It is a PMP versus show. You're listening in on slayradio.org, and you may be joining me and LP Chip on PmpVs2018 if you want to see a bit of the visual output of the show. And boy, have I got a couple of pieces of news for you. We'll get into that in a bit, but first of all, welcome to the show. It's Saturday evening. It is the very last show for the year here in 2018, and hopefully everything goes as planned. It hasn't been that long, really. I've done a show or two consistently for the past couple of weeks, and so have a few other broadcasters, Slagan Ziona and Cracks Ultima as well, on the microphone, as it were, on the decks, whereas they would say in Britain, on the ones and twos, which is, God, that statement has a special place in hell, in my opinion, but it's a story for another time. Ooh, and anyway, people also on IRC, of course, hello to you as well. Technica is joining us. Hello, Technica. Don't remember seeing that nickname before. As before, I will repeat this somewhat throughout the show, and I do apologize to people who just want to listen as opposed to watch. There is a visual component of the show. It is on www.plan.mix. Sorry, not plan.mix. Jeez, planmixplay.com. That's planmixplay.com. And it's just me and LP Chip in the moment. But who knows? Maybe someone else is going to be joining us as well. I have a minor script for you, lovely people, tonight. It's holidays. It's vacation. There isn't that much going on, but I have, of course, a couple of things on my mind. But before we get to any of that, I thought we'd play tonight's first request, which comes in, well, technically, the very first request of the evening came in from Madman at 1830. I didn't even know the requester actually enabled itself that early. Usually I thought it was like at most 30 minutes in advance, but apparently you can request really early these days. Madman requested a Saturday night extension, and while the sentiment is much appreciated, Madman, given that I have to get up really early tomorrow, it's unlikely. And there goes the bed, by the way. Now it's just me in a dark, cold void. So yeah, Madman, I do appreciate the sentiment, but unlikely, unfortunately. But hey, 2 hours is better than nothing, and who knows, maybe 3 hours is, yeah, I don't know, maybe you'd go crazy listening to that. Furthermore, LP Chip, who is stating in the chat that the YouTube stream is buffering and Slay Radio is working perfectly, had a request as well. He would like a bit of Morty with Tristesse, which I've got lined up for you. And let me just briefly address the matter of YouTube buffering. There's not much I can do about that. All I can say is I have at least some control over my stream to YouTube, and as best I can tell, it's all running smoothly. There are no frames dropped. If it becomes a persistent issue, I might start looking into other people who have issues streaming, despite the fact that it claims that there are no frames dropped. If you ask me, and this is my humble opinion, it's very likely that YouTube sort of prioritizes streams depending on the popularity of the channel. Just like they might prioritize kind of triggering and getting the whole machinery spun up to stream out by priority of channel as well. And my channel is very, very small. 23 subscribers, basically. I'm, of course, hoping to grow that number eventually. But until then, it may be subject to these restrictions, and who knows, it might also just be me fucking screwing everything up and having no clue of what I'm doing, and maybe I just need to hit a checkbox and turn a wheel and sacrifice a goat. I don't know. We'll see. And also now LP Chip says YouTube is doing okay. Yeah, look, it's probably going to go up and down, and I'll try not to comment on that, because who gives a fuck about what YouTube is doing when you're not watching it. But again, one last time, for those who want to watch and see a bit of the visuals of the show, Just join us on planmixplay.com. In the meantime, here's Morty with Tristesse. Morty with Tristesse. Robots Have Depressions 2 mix, requested by LP Chip. thank you very much for requesting that. And as people are joining, I will once again plug the visuals and say if you want to join in and have a look at the visual component of the show, just go to www.planmixplay.com. Me, Immortal, and LP Chip are hanging out there and having a bit of a chat on one of the latest features, which I suppose I should just get into the script now and talk a bit about that. So I've been a busy bee this past week and have implemented two, maybe I would say user requested, but maybe the right term is just user commented on requests. And as usual, I've tried to keep my mouth shut, but now things are actually ready. They're two minor things, and disclaimer up front, they're both visual in nature. So if you're going nuts over me not having a bed, that is to say constant music in between constant music in between the songs that I play, then yes, I'm going to have to disappoint you there. With that out of the way, the number one thing that's been updated, as people watching the visual output will notice, obviously, is that there is now a proper color scheme. That is to say, the lovely 16-color palette, which was supported on the Commodore 64, is now supported here via PlanMix Play as well. And I think it actually looks a bit crappy, to be honest. But if nothing else, it's far more readable. So it does look a bit like the colors are a bit, well, I don't know. I'm just not sure I've actually ended with the right choice. And I'll try to remember to ask this later, but if anyone watching or just listening has any suggestions as to how they'd want the color layout to look, while of course keeping to the 16-color palette of the Commodore 64, feel free to send me over a rendition. Like just take a screenshot or something and then color it however you want. Keep in mind, I'm mainly just talking about how to color the the current elements that are currently colored. So if all the chat text, all the chat names, the tapes, the logo up top, stuff like that. Well, logo is a generous word for the text that just says planmixplay.com. Right. Also, some of you may have noticed that the color is a bit darker. So if you were to Google C64 color palette, you'll find a wiki entry which has some basic information, basically stating what the color component output was for the C64. Oh man, that's actually me. It's funny that, I'll comment on that in a bit. The color palette it has been changed, and basically that's because before I picked colors kind of from a C64 emulator, and then later on I basically found someone made a lovely write-up on the interwebs called Commodore VIC-2 Color Analysis, a gentleman by the name of Carsten Scheibler, and he's basically done some work trying to normalize the color palette of the Commodore 64. Because of course the Commodore 64 was around back in the day when everyone had a CRT, so the output of the Commodore 64 and the colors that you would end up watching were very dependent on whatever saturation and brightness settings you had on the TVs. And I'd argue those varied much, much more wildly than they do on today's flat screen TVs. So everyone has kind of their own brightness and saturations and I basically decided to just pick what this dude considers to be sort of the best normalized approximation. It's basically making each color as distinct as possible, I guess. Maybe that's not... I think so. Anyway, and like I said, if anyone wants to take a crack at coloring the output a bit, you can kind of look for... you can kind of Google what colors are available and try to color things as you see fit. I should, of course, note up front, I have absolutely no guarantees as to whether or not I will use anything you send my way, and if I do end up using it, how long I'll use it for. So please, don't make any assumptions there. Right then, and with that out of the way, LP Chip commented he didn't know that the C64 had a cursor. Yes, well, on occasion I'll be accidentally hovering my mouse over the output, which is kind of surprising to me because I thought that I'd fixed this, and apparently I didn't. Now, there we go. Now there shouldn't be any mouse on top anymore. And Immortal chimes in and says that he's very bad at GUI design, so he can't help. Well, I guess coloring is GUI design, but, you know, either way. Let's take another request. Let's see here. Someone requested Kraut Guy. You wanted the Great Giana Sisters rock metal cover by Vangelis Papadopoulos. And of course, you're also kind enough to mention that the original was by Chris Hulsbeck, which you are absolutely correct on. So I have that lined up for you. I have not heard this particular rendition before. So let's take it away with Vangelis Papadopoulos, the Great Giana Sisters. Vangelis, I guess is how you pronounce it, Papadopoulos with the Great Giana Sisters rock metal cover requested by Kraut Guy. So thank you very much, Kraut Guy, for requesting that. Lord Evil also had a request next in line, which is Rapture Galactic, the Xmas edition in-game, and I'd have to ask, where exactly is that remix from? I haven't been able to track down anything on RKO, and I'm not familiar with the game, so Lord Evil, I will be needing a bit more help here to figure out where exactly to find this particular remix. In the meantime, I'll just pick something myself, because that's just the type of guy I am. Why don't we also just cover the other feature while we're at it? So as I said, 2 new features. One is colors. Speaking of which, I noted on the chat in the visuals that it took me about 3 days to put this in, which also surprised me. I had kind of planned, I guess, a day to do this. And Immortal was kind enough to chime in and said, 3 days to pick colors? LOL. Well, not exactly. I'm paraphrasing here, but you know I get what he's getting at. And yes, it took quite a while. And the silly thing is, it's like the output is from a viewer perspective barely changed. But you'd be surprised at the work that needs to be done sometimes, depending on the back end that is running. I mean, I think most people probably know that it's not an actual Commodore 64 running a chat system. It is just sort of a vague fake lookalike, and putting that together in a, I guess, convincing manner, getting the ratios and the sizing right, and now finally color. takes time. You wouldn't believe it. It's not a quick and dirty thing, and I would say it's only kind of possible because a lot of really excellent work has been done by the people who've built the framework that I'm building a lot of this on, because they provide you out of the box with a very strong support for text rendering. And that's probably one of the things most people wouldn't have guessed, which is that text rendering via OpenGL, or I guess probably also DirectX, but I don't know that pipeline too well. Text rendering is a nightmare. Like, there is no native support for that. So if you want to render any sort of just regular text on a Windows screen using the OpenGL graphics library, have fun. Like, building that yourself is a damn nightmare. Like, spacing, I can't even begin to. It's hard for me to even try to put it in layman's terms, and it's not because it's super complicated, but the way to put that all together. Letters are basically stored in a texture, and you kind of cut them out of a big texture and then put them together, but you can't just put them together in a straightforward manner. You sort of have to give each of the letters their own space, unless they're monospaced like they are with the C64 font. But if it were any other font, the L's and I's have aren't as wide as, say, an M or a W, and how to break a line when the words kind of, fit together or don't fit together or are too big to fit on a line. Take it from me, it's a nightmare. So if you are doing any sort of textual thing and the framework you're using has some sort of support, just, man, be thankful for that. Anyway, it's the season of Christmas spirit, so I guess just be thankful for things in general. If you got nothing to be thankful for, here's the thing: be thankful for text rendering. And also, Immortal says, this is fake. Now I'm a bit disappointed. Yes, shocker. The website doesn't actually communicate directly with a Commodore 64, but you can pretend it does if you want. And it seems like LP Chip is also hard at work on coming up with a color suggestion, which I'm looking forward to. And finally, Crax Ultima joins us on the chat on IRC, I see. And Lord Evil has come back with some very helpful information as to where to... as to where to get this particular remix that he's after. In the meantime, please enjoy a bit of Alien Sweet and Blue. little bit of Alien there with the Sweet and Blue song. For a moment, I thought that was the name of the remix or a version of the remix. No, it was the radio edit. And you get a free burp in there as well, because after all, it is Christmas. I, for one, so I don't know about you, but I, for one, I'm looking forward to the next 10 days quite a bit. Because these past 10 days, I've mostly been busy working or shopping or... I mean, look, I've had time off as well, but it's not often that I get I would say, multiple consecutive days to kind of do whatever I want. So I've been quite eager to push ahead with some things on this project, and I've gotten some stuff done. Not exactly what I was hoping to, but some of the stuff that I planned. And that's usually always the way it goes. It always takes way longer than you think. Lord Evil. He wanted Rapture Galactic the Xmas Edition in-game, and I should have guessed it was a Amiga remix, and I, for one, am a big fan of the Amiga myself, because that was... So I started with the Commodore 64 when I was just a little, well, I'd almost say a baby. Like, we're talking 3 years old here. And the Amiga already kind of came along and swooped in by the time I was 6 years old. So it was probably more prominent in my youth, I would say. So I'm a very big Amiga fan person. In fact, I have given some thought to also creating a sort of a fake Amiga output for a show. But obviously the visuals there are of a much higher fidelity, and also this is like radio, and so fuck the Amiga. What the thing. The Amiga was the next Commodore machine, and while it did not set the world on fire like the Commodore 64 did, it did all right. It was competent for its day, I feel. Anyway, enough jibber-jabbering for me. There is a script that we're getting onto, but in the meantime, here's Lord Evil's request with Rapture Galactic the Xmas Edition. Rapture with Well, yeah, it is Rapture who made the song. Galactic, the Xmas edition in-game, requested by Lord Evil. So thank you very much for requesting that. I can't say that I was, didn't really... So I never heard the song before. This is the type of song I put in kind of the maybe pile for me. Like, give it a couple more listens, see if I find something to latch on to. Nevertheless, very apt that it's a Christmas tune, and I do much appreciate that people are clearly leaning towards requesting Xmas songs, because that's what I have in the request list. So again, thank you very much, Lord Evil, for requesting that. Right, moving along with the script here, we have covered the new features. Unfortunately, that's kind of it for now, but more to come in the future. I have a bunch of features that aren't particularly relevant for the show here, but I may kind of pop in and out of every now and again. I'm wondering if I should chat a bit or just go straight into the next song. You know what? I think we're gonna go straight into the next request for now, because we are past the quarter mark. First half hour of the show down, 3 quarters to go. Then I'll chat a bit more after that. So, next up, Cracks Ultima writes, "Hi Gazoo, how's it hanging? Short, shriveled, and always to the left, my friend. Merry Xmas. Can we have Randall an Xmas jazz combo? John Zorn ringtone Xmas jazz combo." It's just, sometimes this reminds me of like 90s songs that would be like, I don't know, Smoking a Fat Joint, Big John version, featuring Dizzy Dizzy Faux Chizzy, with exclusive hook by, I don't know, Pharrell, Zeta Boy remix. Like, just 8 different people on top of each other, basically putting it together. And hey, I get it. Sometimes, in fact, not originally intended remixes can be the best. And then you'll usually end up with at least 3 names, because it'll be produced by someone, there'll be someone it was featured, and then along comes the third person who has nothing to do with the first 2, but put their mitts on it and was kind of like, hey, here's how the song actually should be put together. And in case someone would like a great example of that, it's K Tranada with ATM Jam. Originally a song by Pharrell, together with, I think her name is Azalea Banks. And man, is the K Tranada version so much better. It's crazy. So if you Google ATM Jam with K Tranada, that's good stuff. Try to listen to the original first if you want to, and yeah, it's tough. Anyway, in the meantime, Cracks Ultima, you would like a little bit of the Randall Xmas Jazz combo, so here you go. just couldn't dare to speak over that lovely violin ending there. That was a bit of Randall Xmas combo, John Zorn ringtone Xmas jazz combo. Christ, I tell you what, my headphones, sometimes they're great. I have the Artemis something G933 whatever, that's numbering schemes. If you want to get me riled up about something, that's also like, I get it. There's a good reason why the Xbox was called the Xbox 360, despite the fact that it was just a follow-up to the regular Xbox. Because, hey, guess what? We can't have the PlayStation 3 be called PlayStation 3 and our Xbox be called Xbox 2. That will matter enough. Like, it sounds ridiculous when you say it out loud, but no, that will have an impact. There will be certain people who see Xbox 2 and think that's probably a worse console than the PlayStation 3. Because, the PlayStation 3 is the third one. It's number 3. And the Xbox is just number 2. So, that. It almost harkens all the way back to the 16-bit, the bit wars of 8-bit, 16-bit, 32-bit. I mean, look how that went. When you got to the absurd level of game consoles claiming 64-bit, like this has to be the biggest irony of all. The Jaguar. So for people who remember back in the day, the 16-bit wars basically duked it out between the Super Nintendo and the Mega Drive, also known as the Genesis. And these two consoles were kind of at the center of everything. The Amiga was a 16-bit machine as well, if I recall correctly, but just wasn't competing with the consoles on the same level. And around that, towards sort of the middle of that generation, a couple of other consoles came along. The 32X upgrade for the Genesis and the Mega Drive, as well as the Jaguar. And the Jaguar was one of Atari's entries into the gaming era, and they had a commercial which was basically just like, our shit's better because we have 64-bit, do the math. And don't get me wrong, you can sometimes sell things really easily to kids. Like, sometimes you can all you need to do is to quote something stupid like that and say like, oh, well, 32-bit is better than 16-bit. And then on the playground, you'll have kids, defending that up and down. But it's a bittersweet irony that the Jaguar did as god-awfully as it did, and yet touting this and that about its hardware, and A, not being very well supported, and B, the games that were on it were just not very impressive. I mean, part of that was just, there are many reasons behind that, and 64-bit is probably the least of them. But if I recall, someone also did a nice dissection of the hardware itself, and found out that, yes, one of the processors in the machine was 64-bit, whereas the vast majority was still 16 or 32. So to call your machine 64-bit when, I don't know, let's say your sound chip supports that architecture, that is to say that specific instruction set that takes 64 bits, but everything else runs in 16 or 32, I think you're pulling a fast one, basically. Anyway, more requests coming up next, because it's the season of giving, and I'm in a very giving mood, which I've kind of been all the past shows, really. Like, my shows have been very requesty heavy, with some scriptorinos, but yeah, we're just taking it one request at a time here. Oh, and by the way, thank you to Cracks Ultima for that previous request. That was very lovely and very Christmassy. But now it's time for some non-Christmas stuff. Luke Hash with Alien. This is something Madman wanted to hear, and I'm more than happy to oblige.
As we play Alien. Alien.
Luke Hash right there with a bit of Alien. Very well put together, by the way. Requested by Madman. So thank you very much for requesting that. Much appreciated. Second request, by the way, from Madman. I was talking a bit about the Jaguar and the Bit Wars and back in the day. Oh, here comes a... there you go. Free of charge. Aren't you lucky? Digital Foundry is a YouTube channel, but it's more than that. It's also, I guess, a sort of a... I don't know what to call it. A company or sort of a content producer? What they usually do is look very closely at new video games and how they perform and compare them. Like, we're talking, they really pick things apart and analyze them. Like, they do very detailed breakdowns of popular games. And not surprisingly, they've gotten into the retro game craze that's basically been, I guess, just ongoing and growing for the past 2 decades or so. So if you want to see some classic games being broken down by the different systems they were released on, I highly recommend that. For example, they have a breakdown of Pitfall: The Mayan Adventure, which was released on a lot, like really across the board, like Amiga, Jaguar, Mega Drive with an X32 on it, Super Nintendo, maybe even the TurboGrafx. They have a shit ton of them, and Windows, of course, as well. And it's fascinating because you get a bit of insight into, like, you get the sort of breakdown you as a kid would just never see. Like, they really talk about, well, here the game, like, this is, they'll kind of break it down by saying, this is the best version of the game on all the platforms because it has, I don't know, the highest frame rate, it has the best color resolution, and of course, if I'm not mistaken, that's basically the Windows version, despite the fact that the Windows version, even with emulation, is notoriously difficult to get running. Like, that's one of those games where it's like, if you install Windows 95 on a 486, you'll have a better shot at running Pitfall than you will on any modern machine pretending to be a Windows machine, apparently. But then, basically, they said, well, if you don't have that, should you play it on a Mega Drive emulator? Should you play it on the 32X? Or, God forbid, the proper hardware. I think there's even a Saturn version of that game. And they do a really good job of breaking it down. And it's fascinating to see that certain machines, if I'm not mistaken, for example, I believe it was the Saturn that does not do any transparency whatsoever, which really, really shows in a couple of games. Like, they get around that by dithering. So instead of being able to draw a color on top of another one and shade the underlying color somewhat to create the effect of transparency, they basically kind of draw this mesh net of pixels on top of something instead. And certain consoles wouldn't have that, wouldn't have a great color palette, or some of them were like, for background tiles you can do this many colors, and for the foreground you can do that many. In some cases, the frame rate is very choppy, and in other words, it's silky smooth. I think one of the most interesting things is, for example, the 32X version of Pitfall. If I'm not mistaken, I think in the video they basically say part of the game is still executed by the Mega Drive, and the Mega Drive has a low color palette but a really high frame rate because it's basically built to draw 2D sprites really, really well. So it has a lot of hardware acceleration to support those operations, which means the background in Pitfall: The Mayan Adventure on the 32X runs at a silky smooth 60 frames per second. However, the foreground, which is in much higher color detail because it's rendered via the 32X, is running at a paltry 20 to 30 frames per second because for some reason the hardware that Sega put together didn't have any hardware support for the sprite scaling and rotation, or at least did that very poorly, because I guess at that point Sega was maybe already saying, no, we need, games like Star Fox or Virtua Fighter, we need something, with a bit of 3D shit in it, and so, I don't know, take out all the hardware that does the quick and fast 2D stuff and put in some more hardware that does 3D stuff. And also, to be honest, by trying to not poop too much on the 32X, it really was a very cheap device and sold as such. Like, when it was released brand new, I think it was $149 American dollars as an upgrade for the Genesis, which compared to other consoles at the time sold around $300 or $400, arguably cheap. And I guess if you pay peanuts, you get monkeys, or in this case, monkey crap. Anyway, we're reaching the halfway show. And before I put on the next request, I just again want to let people know that if they do want to see the visuals to the show, they can jump on to www.planmixplay.com. You don't actually have to join the chat there. You can just kind of hang out and have a look at it. But that's entirely up to you. If you want to just not do that, hey man, we're still best of buddies. And I'm also best of buddies with Johnny Aquarius, who wanted Beezer. Well, let's go.
Let's go! Let's go!
Berserk with Let's Go, requested by none other than Johnny Aquarius. Thank you very much, Johnny Aquarius, for requesting that. That's a fucking awesome tune, gotta say. Really, really good stuff. And, man, for a moment there, I was wondering if I had to kind of pull a repeat request out of the bag again. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but I do try to just, squeeze everyone in and have everyone do their one request or whatever else. And also, it's a small show, so, there's usually plenty of time for that. I have one last thing on my mind before we, I guess as we reach the halfway point. And this ties a little into what Ziona and Slagon were talking on their previous show. Ziona and Slagon, lovely people. I've unfortunately only had the pleasure of meeting. That's the thing. I have to rack my brain. So I was at the gathering, not the last one, but the one prior to that. I'm not sure if Ziona was there. She might have been. I do apologize, Ziona, if we met and I don't remember. I have a very bad memory about these things. But then again, it's also 2 years ago, so cut me some slack. Why are you so mad? Come on, don't be angry. Yeah, I don't know. It's a bad showing from my side. Anyway, and also Go Hanks has just alleviated me of all my guilt and said she wasn't there. So, whew. So again, now I feel completely in the clear and can just, poop all over. No, I'm not going to say that. I'm not going to go there. Some statements were made in their last show about what's interesting and what isn't in regards to the demos from the demos scene. And I believe Kate Bit was there weighing in, giving her 2 bits. Huh? And this is where I would cue the tumbleweed sound, but I don't have a soundboard. Anyway, my view is that I'm not surprised that people have very strong opinions on what they find interesting and what they find is uninteresting, or find to be uninteresting. I personally can totally see why tweaking old hardware to do crazy new shit is really interesting, making it do things that were, previously impossible. I'm a big fan of that. And this is the thing that I chimed in on their show, and Slagon seemed to agree, which I'm happy with. But, anyone's welcome to disagree as well. And get banned? No. We welcome all opinions here. But the point is, people might also just like demos that do cool shit and not give a crap about the back-end tech stuff. And I know I'm kind of rehashing what's already been said here, because I don't think Ziona and Slagon ended on any sort of opposing argument. But, I don't see the problem in raising it again here. The point is just people like different things. And my main opinion would just be don't poop on things you don't like. Just, speak fondly of the stuff that you do like. Because I'm going to make a bit of a generalization here and say that people passionate about nerdy stuff have a strong tendency to become a bit high and mighty about the stuff they prefer and why it's way better than that other stuff. I.e., this 32-bit console is way better than your 16-bit console because, yours only have half the bits, so bleh. Your stuff is garbage, and my Jaguar is way better than your CD32, which, by the way, is also not a great console. So, in that case, I would say both of them lose. You can be friends because both your consoles are shit. Jaguar and the CD32 together. Also, my dad can beat up your dad. So anyway, don't be a douche. By all means, be passionate about what you like. Just don't poop on other people's parade, is what I'm saying. And I haven't checked out demo stuff in a while. I really should do that for fun. But I haven't done that. And also, demos are a great source of inspiration to see like new visuals and see what's happening. So, man, more requests. Now I'm already lining up more here than I think I can manage to chew. But I will do my best. Coming up next, the Magnificent Cthulhu, or Cthulhu, if you will. I've never heard Cthulhu be referenced with the what's it called? Adjective? Yes, the adjective magnificent. I mean, sure, but usually I'm used to hearing the terrible or the, I guess, the scary or the horrifying. But the magnificent, it kind of sounds like Cthulhu's putting on a downtown show at the Apollo Theater. It's like the Magnificent Cthulhu. Tonight, for one night only, come, have your souls stolen and go mad at the same time. It's the Magnificent Cthulhu. And he would like some Amok with Ice Age the Punchless mix, which I've not heard. I've heard Ice Age by Amok before, but not this mix, so I'm all ears for that. Take it away, Amok. Ooh, so I see LP Chip has apparently come up with a couple of suggestions for coloring the chat. Gonna have to take a look at those and think a little about it. Yes, I do see what you're talking about. The alternating coloring is certainly to be considered. I think that's a great idea, by the way. It's a very commonly used web trick. So like have every other chat line be a different color, which would definitely make it more readable. Or yet still, I have to say though, I'm not sure about how I feel about making the chat color. Well, then look, I know you wrote something to the effect of like, hey, I'm a little more partial to, what was it? The first one looks better, but the second one is easier to read. Yeah, that's the thing. So that's exactly what I was thinking. That the white color for the chat is probably preferable to me because that makes it the most readable, and that's a very big part for me, because as much as I do like making it look cool, as GoHanks noted earlier, it is the C64 palette, so choices are limited. But many thanks, LP Chip, for throwing your hat in the ring. I'll have a look and see if I can fiddle a bit with that. I certainly like the alternating lines. What I'd really like to do is to keep the white and then have a slightly less white color, like the lightest grays, and see how that looks. We'll give that a try. Anyway, that's a little bit of a visual chat there. There are only 3 people. That's the other thing here. I realize that the show is primarily listened to rather than watched, but that is to say, I know a couple of people probably catch the YouTube stream after the broadcast is finished. So although we just have 3 viewers and I think like 54 listeners or something, yeah, I'm hoping that as a listener you aren't too bummed out by some of these visuals. Or the visual chat. That's just kind of part of, I guess, the deal when you listen to my show. Speaking of visual stuff, GoHanks is on planmixplay.com in that chat, and GoHanks, you also had a request, which I'm more than happy to play, a bit of Hazel. We've also had, Berserk was also great by Knee Jerk Aquarius. I think that was the name. Now it's time for a bit of Hazel, courtesy of GoHanks with Light Speed. Take it away, Hazel. Hazel with light speed requested by Go Hanks. So thank you very much, Go Hanks, for requesting that. Also, it's been a while, Go Hanks. You're keeping busy, I presume, because I remember you you used to loiter a bit, I'd say, or just kind of idle and AFK. But these days, it seems like you're just buried in everyday life stuff, which I get. Hey, that's these things happen. And everything kind of, nothing lasts forever in a way. And in that way, that's good because it means you sort of put more value into it, I would say. But on the other hand, of course, it also sucks if you really liked something and it stops being a thing. It's just life, I suppose. Before we get too philosophical, let's instead talk about something much less philosophical, which is the burger discussion going on in the chat. And I'll weigh in, as I've already mentioned in the chat, people talking a bit about McDonald's and a couple of other Burger Kings, Wendy's, Burger King and such. And as I stated in the chat, if I had to pick between what I consider the most globally available fast food, I would pick what I consider to be the lesser evil, which is Burger King, or as it's known down under, Hungry Jack's. But I'll also be honest and say, I think as I've gotten older, I dislike Burger King more and more as well. Like, their burgers are just very sort of boring in a way. And I think I've probably become a bit of a burger snob since living in Melbourne, because holy fucking shit, burgers in Melbourne are on a new level. And it's sort of like you can get a menu for, I think, like a menu meal for around $14-15 at a Burger King or a McDonald's. And you'll get, the burger, the fries, and the soda. If you want the same from a non-franchise, but much, much, much higher upscale place, there's a great joint called Betty's Burgers and Concrete. There's Royal Stacks, there is the Burger Project, there's 8-Bit Burger, there's just, I could go on and on. There are so many of them. And if you want to have a full menu there, usually you're looking at like $20 to $25. So, $5 to $10 more dollars, which isn't nothing, but man, is the burger just so much better. So if you're ever in Melbourne, I can highly recommend any of the places I just rattled off. They're all quite good. Let's play some more requests. I have a lot. And Sandals, you're hanging out. Apparently a little inebriated, as you say. According to you, as you are always. Your words, not mine. You want a bit of Aki Järvinen with Commando. And I don't know if you didn't specify the remix. I presume this is the one and only he has. Commando 2011, the metal remix. And that was Aki Järvinen with Commando 2011, the metal remix, requested by Sandals. So thank you very much for requesting that. Let's take another request right away. And it's totally not because I'm eating anything. I will be very unprofessional of me. No. I just feel like taking another request. What? Why are you looking at me like that? I'm not eating. I have a mouth condition. R-Typer wanted a bit of a mock R-Type The Return remix, and I'm happy to oblige. And that was a little bit of a mock with R-Type, the return remix for R-Typer, which is sort of limits, I would say, the expected requests from someone named R-Typer, but who knows? Maybe it's someone who figured out that they can game the system and think, hey, if I just give myself a different name, I can get another request played. Which isn't entirely untrue. Also, I can see Vax Voltar is in the shout box as well. I keep forgetting we have a lot of ways to interact with the show. And I do appreciate, Madman, you sharing the visual link to YouTube on Shoutbox as well. And that's the thing. I bet a couple of you are probably listening in or watching or whatever and still wondering, like, man, why'd you make another chat? Why'd you put another option on the table? And, well, hopefully, slowly, you can kind of see what it is I'm trying to build towards. Like, I do intend to make the show even more visually appealing. I think I've probably mentioned that, you know, having some gameplay footage in the background from the various songs we're playing would be really, really cool. But that's still a ways off. I have certain things that need to get done first and foremost. Speaking of things that need to get done, I'm moving just, you know, quick down the request list here because people are requesting things left and right like there's no tomorrow, and yet there is. Let's see. Yes, Whitebeard, the dank meme pirate. Arr, me matey, says Whitebeard. I was gonna throw in another sort of piratey saying there, but then I don't know, I froze up. Anyway, Army matey, I would like to request Marcel Dunne with Sweet Please, or you'll walk the plank, you landlubber. I inserted that last bit. The Whitebeard person did not actually say that. Instead he said, I'll keel haul you. No, he didn't say that either. Here is a bit of Sweet by Marcel Dunne. or as Immortal would say at the end of the PmpVs Play pug, something like that. If I felt more confident in PmpVs Play, I would totally quote that end bit there, because yeah. And as Phase Debased would say, what's wrong with you? Anyway, that was a bit of Marcel Donné with Sweet, and I can't believe that I actually had to download that song. I've heard that countless times. It is a fantastic remix, and it was requested by Whitebeard, the dank meme pirate. I still cannot believe I didn't have that, so thank you very much for requesting that. God, we're coming up on the fourth and final quarter of the show. As I mentioned before, it's going to be a pretty much ending on time sort of deal, because I'm getting up pretty early in the morning to skedaddle over to Denmark, being situated in Germany. And I guess it's fair up front to note that there will be no shows over the Christmas and New Year's period. This is literally the last show for me in 2018. I believe there's been a couple of others. I think Slagon and Siona mentioned perhaps doing a show. Maybe Crax Ultima, who knows? Maybe even Boz will come back. He had a brief comeback here recently and did a Christmassy show, a Crimbus show, if I'm not mistaken. I did catch that, and Kate Bit as well. Kate Bit's everywhere these days, by the way. She's like the hottest artist being featured on something. It's just like, featuring Kate Bit in every capacity, except for here, because this is a crappy show. We don't have good guests on here. We just have me, because that's what we could afford, Anyway, I have another request lined up, this time from CJ Warlock, who wrote that hardstyle remix of Thundercats Defiance, Thundercats Destroyer of Worlds. I appreciate that you elaborate a bit more on which version is the hardstyle remix, because I would not have been able to remember that. It's for damn sure. So CJ Warlock, your request is here. God, that is a hard style version for sure. Defiance with Thundercats Destroyer of Worlds mix. And as CJ Warlock also wrote in the chat, here's a Saturday Night Party mode tune for y'all. And I do agree. It's that of all, like Boz would say, of all the songs that I've heard, that's one of them. And look, it's not a bad song. It's just, it's in a genre that isn't near the top of my genre likes. It's not, not a bad genre at all. Yes. God, we're closing in on the last 20 minutes of the show as well here. That's quick. And Immortal chimes in on the chat and says, instead of having me play that lovely plug that he and Phased Based did for the third time in a row, I think I'm going to give it a bit of a rest. And then he says, we can just incorporate Skype and TeamSpeak and we're live. Yes, it is. Look, even the crappy, lame PlanMix Play system probably would be able to handle that as long as the output comes through my machine. So I think that's totally a possibility. I'll have to give that some thought. I do like having more than one person on the show, but I'll be honest and say PlanMix Play, the chats and the visuals are already quite the heavy mental load. I could tweak things to make it less of a load. There are certainly things I could do that are currently automatable. So I'll give it a bit of thought, but thumbs up for the suggestion nonetheless. Now then, more requests. I believe I shall play this one. Lord Evil writes and says something by Makke, your choice. And since we had such a hardstyle version, I think we need something to lighten the mood a little bit. And this is by far the most mood-lightening song I think I have from Makke. So take it away, Makke. Oh boy.
With a radius for miles and miles, she has been in all the trousers of every guy you know in town. Good or bad, like it or not, she's the only one you've got. I won't let your mom go down on me. I won't let your mom go down. I won't let your mom go down on me. No, I won't let your mom go down.
There we go, a little bit of Makke with I Won't Let Your Mom Go Down on Me, requested by Lord Evil. Well, sort of. Something by Makke, your choice, was his request, and I hope that fits the bill, because, you know, it technically fulfilled the only criteria, which was it was something by Makke. We're coming to the end of the show. We're not quite there yet, but I think it's going to probably just be another 2 songs, which means I am going to unfortunately leave a bunch of secondary requesters hanging, namely Kraut Guy, LP Chip, Cracks Ultima, and Madman, but I do very much appreciate it. It's funny to see, you know, tiny progress steps like that. I remember back in the day, and we're talking years ago, when I started doing a show, I'd get like 1 request, and it's, in a way, it kind of feels like, you know, growing your audience organically. And I also get, I think it's a sort of it's kind of an interesting thing, because Slay Radio's audience has kind of taken a bit of a dive, because there was, and I think there was a period that Slay Radio wasn't up and running, and not surprisingly, people's patience is somewhat limited, but I think in this case they can absolutely be forgiven, because I think it was a quite a bit of a hiatus before things got back on track, and I'm not really going to comment on that. The whole point is that although the audience size has shrunk a bit, I now, for I think the first time in a while, I actually had the first show where I have way more requests than I actually have time to play. And of course, I know I could just make the show longer, but as I explained earlier, that's unfortunately not really an option, even though I would like to do so. And we'll see what happens. I'm trying to again polish the show. Hopefully you will agree that the new visuals for those of you watching are a little better, much more readable. And I do very much appreciate LP Chip for also throwing his hat in the ring to see if he could maybe improve a bit on them. And CJ Warlock says, I'm glad my request fit in the time of the show, and you're most welcome. I got to play at least everyone's request once, and now I thought that I'd squeeze my own request in, because we've had a bit of Berserk, we've also had a bit of Hazel, and to me, the trifecta almost, and like, man, these are some damn good remixers. I mean, there are plenty of them, but these 3 are very good. It's a bit of Defunk with Trick Bag Modified. The Funk with Trick Bag Modified, and I think it's time for another burp. Man, that's some... Wait. There we go. Very professional. Seems like a perfect way to close out the show, to be honest. I have had a lovely time. I hope you have as well. I expect to be doing... let's see. Should I... Look, let's talk about the shows at the end. Let me first thank people. Of course, thank you to all the chatters hanging out on planmixplay.com. LP Chip, Gohamks, Cracks Ultima, and Immortal. Thank you for joining in on the visual chat and having a look at that. Thanks, of course, to the people in the IRC chat as well. Madman, Sandal, CJ Warlock, Lord Evil, I remember seeing in there. A bunch of other people. And also thank you to you just listening in and not chatting at all. That's, whatever floats your boat. Do whatever you want. I hope everyone has a lovely Christmas. Or just happy holidays if Christmas is not something you celebrate, as well as a happy New Year, or again just happy holidays if you do not celebrate the New Year. And I will be back sometime next year, I believe, and I'm gonna try to announce this somewhat in advance. The 5th or the 6th, I will be doing another show. So basically, the first weekend coming 2019. I also know that I'm pretty sure Ziona and Slagon will probably be doing a show before the year is over as well. And a little birdie told me that there is also a show actively going on Boz Radio. So if you are so inclined, now is the time to, well, not yet, but pretty soon is the time to switch over to Boz Radio. And I believe if I just Google that, yeah, it's just bozradio.com. And there's a live show with Z-Duder on there called The Z Factor. It's, of course, non-C64 related, but, hey, whatever, man. So, yes, I had an awesome time. I'm going to let Martin Dodd with Thanatos take us out. And I'm just going to line up the end of the show here. Let's see, put that there. Zoom in. Yes, we're all lined up to go. So once again, thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. I hope to provide you with more interesting shows next year. I've had a great time. Sorry it was only 2 hours, but hey, there you go. So once again, have a happy 2018 and hope you get safely into the new year. I wish all of you a great holiday time.